Welcome back. We're here to preview Saturday afternoon's Premier League game between Southampton and Spurs. Might as well start with Spurs. Their unbeaten run finally came to an end at home to Newcastle last time.
It was club record 14 games, wasn't it? Fantastic run, really. You would say there was too many draws and that really to make them title contenders, but I was considering them dark horses, and that's what made the defeat to Newcastle all the more surprising. Obviously, Newcastle were coming off the back of that good win over Liverpool as well, so they were full of confidence, but not many people were expecting them to go to White Hart Lane and get that victory. It was a bit of a smash and grab in the way they got it late on, but you'd say over the course of the game they probably deserved at least a point from that. Tottenham, they had their chances, obviously took the lead through Dyer's header. He's turned into a very good player, both from open play and a real threat from set pieces as well, so he's been a real positive of this season. But to then concede a pretty scrappy equaliser, and then later on, I think Hugo Lloris, to be honest, should have been, certainly for the second goal, but probably for both of them, he should have done a bit better. And he's made a couple of mistakes in recent weeks now. He's not usually, we consider him one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League, but he's made a couple of mistakes recently, so he's in a bit of shaky form. He'll want to get out of that as soon as possible. As I mentioned, second goal he really should have done better for, but even worse, to give away that late goal then would have been heartbreaking for them, because they could have taken advantage of other teams in the league as well, but they weren't able to do that. So really disappointing them. The first defeat since the opening day as well, and the only defeat before that was due to that own goal from Kyle Walker, really unlucky as well. So this is the first time they've been beaten by the other team scoring more goals than them all season, so it'll be a bit of a reality check to them, because people, myself included, would have been starting to consider them as dark horses for the title.
Yeah, I think it was a missed opportunity, wasn't it? Because with United losing against Bournemouth, they would have gone fourth with a win there, and now you look at the table, they're level with Palace, and Watford just one behind as well, and they probably count themselves maybe a little lucky that Everton didn't beat Norwich, Liverpool didn't beat West Brom, so that those teams who probably they might consider their more realistic rivals, maybe to sneak into the top four or for those fifth and sixth European spots. They also dropped points last weekend, but you look at their recent form, only one win in the last 5 Premier League games, drawing 3, losing 1. Hasn't really been, they had that, some really great results. They've had the odd good result here and there. That one against City, 4-1 at home was especially good. They've had some really good ones, but in recent weeks it's kind of dropped off again. Kane's form, he's gone a bit, quieter since, he scored that, was it a hat-trick against Bournemouth he had, and he's gone a bit quieter. The likes of Dele Alli, he didn't look at his best the other week as well, and you just wonder if maybe they're dropping off a bit, and you think you don't want to drop off at this time of year because you've got a lot of fixtures coming up thick and fast around the festive period, and they want to get back to winning ways here, because Southampton not in great form, as we'll talk about, but you look at the way Watford are going. Palace decent win last week as well, and you'd expect Everton and Liverpool to start climbing the table. Spurs, they can't let that great start to the season they had, all those unbeaten games they can't let that drop off and now go on a really bad run.
Yeah, Southampton, as you mentioned, aren't in great form, but Tottenham, away from home, they haven't exactly been setting the world alight either, so far they've been much better at White Hart Lane, and in recent seasons that hasn't always been the case. White Hart Lane's been a bit of a nervy ground, but especially when Tottenham aren't playing well, the fans are quite quick to get on their backs, but they've been better at home this season. Away from home, it's not terrible. They've only lost one game away from home all season. They've only won 2 though as well from their 7. They've only got 10 points from possible 21 on the road, so it's around the middle of the pack, but it's worse than the likes of West Brom have managed on the road, worse than Stoke have managed on the road, worse than Watford have managed on the road. So for a team who's got top 4 ambitions, they're going to need to do a little bit better than that. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. And if the top 4 teams will always be good at home and away. Obviously, the away form usually drops off a bit compared to home, but not usually that much for Tottenham. So they do need to improve on the road if they've really got that Champions League ambition.
Yeah, maybe that game against Newcastle, the defeat they had there, maybe it played a part. They played in Europe in midweek, and we've since had the Europa League draw. They did get Fiorentina, and that was a really tough draw actually when you consider some of the sides that the others got. United got that Danish team, Midtjylland, and Fiorentina were the team that Spurs got in the last 32 last year, and they lost to them there. So maybe a bit of revenge there, but it's a very difficult tie for them. Obviously not great for their Europa League host. But moving on to Southampton, they also lost last weekend 1-0 at home against Crystal Palace, or away at Crystal Palace, and yeah, it wasn't. They've looked quite poor in recent weeks, Southampton, haven't they? They've really started to drop off, sitting 12th now in the table, winless in 5 in all competitions after they did go 8 unbeaten before that. So they have really dropped off, not being able to score last weekend. They had that late chance through Shane Long, but I don't think they really deserved too much of the two. They had Gazzaniga in goal, and he made a lot more saves than Wayne Hennessy in the Palace goal. And you'd have to say that they probably, it wasn't the best of games, but Johan Cabaye got the goal. Sloppy defending, really. He got into the box and he was pretty much all alone, like on the 6-yard line, and you should never really have that, should you? There's got to be someone there ready to cover that, and he was able to tap it in, and not being able to score there, like I said, leaves them 12th now. So they're not looking quite as good as they were last season, and it'll be interesting to see if they spend money in January because Ronald Koeman, his players aren't quite playing as well as they did last season, and I'd be interested to see what they do.
Yeah, and I mentioned Tottenham's away form, but Southampton's home form is not too encouraging either in recent weeks. They've only lost one of their last 5 in the Premier League, but in all competitions, their last 3 at home have been losses to Stoke. That's 6-1 defeat at the hands of Liverpool, and then a draw with Aston Villa, which is a really poor result considering how poorly Aston Villa are doing so far this season. So they certainly need to improve in front of their own fans. It's gone hand in hand with their dip in form, which, as you mentioned, has been pretty marked since they're 8 unbeaten. So they need to improve sooner rather than later because they're now further away from the top 4 than they are the relegation zone. So they've dropped off a bit, and we talked about that cluster of teams last week before they played Crystal Palace. There was only 3 points separating, I think it was 6th from 12th now, but if they don't get some decent results now, they might just fall out of that cluster in the middle of the pack, which might put them out a distance of the European places going further into 2016. These next 2 games are not going to be easy for them, Tottenham and then Arsenal, both at home, which would be a plus, but both those North London teams will fancy the chance of getting something out of Southampton in this form, and if they only pick up maybe 1 or 2 or any 0 points from that, and the form, as you mentioned, the likes of Palace, Watford, and obviously Tottenham would get points as well in that run if Southampton lost both games, they might find themselves getting cut adrift from that top 6.
I think it's probably Spurs might view this as a good chance to play Southampton, but what's your score prediction?
Yeah, it's quite a tough one to call here. I think I can see Tottenham bouncing back. Southampton, I don't think will make it easier for them, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 Tottenham win, I think.
I don't actually see any goals in this one. I think both teams look a bit bereft of confidence last week, and I think the way Southampton are playing, I think they'll be more scared of losing than not necessarily going for the win against a Spurs side who usually quite solid defensively. So I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw. So got 1 Spurs win and a draw. Thanks for joining us.